Hello, friends. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Backpack Podcast, where we unpack your story so others can embrace it. My team and I have had the pleasure of flying all over the country to gather great stories from great individuals who have experienced success on all different levels. Our team would love to capture your story, so be sure to email us for more information. Now, before we get started, what I'd like for you to do is hit that subscribe button so that you can be alerted for all premium content from the Backpack Podcast. So now, are you ready? Let's go unpack. Thank you all for joining us again on another episode of the Backpack Podcast. I am here with a friend, a sister, a bud, Miss Alyssa Worrell. If I had a clapping sound,
Oh wow,
that would actually
that
be
would have
kind of
been really
dope.
cool,
Yeah, because
right?
I would have hit it like right then. Yeah. Yeah, this is gonna be that kind of episode. Alyssa, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
This is a pleasure. A long time coming.
Yeah,
You know, we actually do vacations together, family events together. Pretty much we're there in all the midst of our families. But we always talk,
right.
you know, in passing about stuff, do stuff together. But to unpack the origin story of who and why, because a lot of people know and see you, they don't know always why.
Right,
You know what I mean?
right.
So I'm going to list some of your titles. I know you don't really kind of boast about this, which is just who you are. But Alyssa's an international youth pastor, speaker. I did it wrong again. Mother, wife, international youth pastor, speaker, author, business owner.
Yes,
You speak specifically to wives. You speak specifically to children. But this is the one that I really want to focus on. These are all the things that she does, by the way.
right.
You are what they consider, and actually you're labeled and called, the parenting guru.
Yes, the parenting guru.
Who does that?
Yes, who does that?
You know, like the parenting guru.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, Alyssa, what I want you to do is I would like for you to first kind of tell them who you are in your words,
Okay,
and then we're going to unpack the parenting guru.
let's do that. Let's
Yeah.
do that. I am Alyssa Joy Worrell,
Joy.
and named by my dad. My name was supposed to be initially like Alicia or something like
Really?
that. Yeah. Now that I'm thinking about that, my name was supposed to be Alicia or Allison, something like that. And then my mom said when he saw me in the hospital, he said Joy, and then he changed it to Alyssa Joy. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, it's so crazy. The song that he sang to me for my entire life, or like when he showed up in a room, or if I showed up in a room, he would go, Alyssa, Alyssa Joy, Alyssa, Alyssa Joy.
What?
Yeah, that just came to me. I just remembered that.
Wow.
But yeah, so my name
Talk
was
about
supposed to be something.
origins. He talked
Huh?
about origins.
I'm telling you, right?
Wow.
And of course, Joy is, I really feel like that name, it literally embodies me.
Oh, absolutely.
It embodies me.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, it's not just my name, but like it exudes out of me.
Yep.
You know, because of that. So, I'm Alyssa Joy Worrell. My family nickname is Missy.
Didn't know that
So
one.
right. So now you know.
Okay.
Now you know. But my family calls me Missy. We all have nicknames.
Right.
Well, no, actually, I have a nickname. My sister, her name is Andrea, but her nickname is Drea. She used to be Dribbles as a baby. Yeah, because she literally, right? So, yeah, my brother Aaron, or Dr. Aaron Ferguson,
Okay.
he doesn't have a nickname. I call him brother, but I call both my brothers brother. So there's four of us.
Okay.
Right? There's four of us. And I think, I have an amazing family.
Wow.
I really do. I've always thought that I think we've always been raised that way, to know that we were like, there was something dynamic about us.
That's beautiful, Alyssa.
Yeah. Even with
beautiful.
the tragedy, tragic, the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent, we still have it to this day, like this cohesive power with us,
Wow.
right? Of course, I'm married. It'll be, what we're saying is the dirty 30. It'll be 30 years.
30
It'll be 30
years.
years, right? It'll be 30 years coming August. And I feel like we're just getting it. We're just getting like, oh, okay.
This is how you do it?
Yeah, this is what's supposed to be happening here.
Wow.
Which has been, a different kind of fun, a different kind of growing, a different kind of, what we're saying is just evolving. Have amazing kids. Amazing kids.
Wow.
I remember once, I have a son, John Avery. I have a son, which we call our spiritual joy, Keenan. A daughter, Dejanay. Call her DJ, or I call her DJ. Or I call her Mochalicious, or I call her Dijon Mustard. Those are her names. and I call her Bear, so she knows.
She's
right.
got a lot going on.
Right, and I call her Bear because, like the three little bears, except there's four of us.
Right.
But she's really like that one,
Right, right.
So just keep asking, and it's going to keep unpacking.
Right,
it's
I
like,
see.
as I'm sitting
I see.
here,
I see.
like I feel stuff is just like bowling out of me, like, oh yeah, and that's me, and that's me, and that's me.
I love it.
But all these things I think are leading to where we're going in terms of how do you get to call yourself the parenting guru. But
so I want to start somewhere because I believe origin stories start at home. Mm-hmm. And you said something specific. We have a wonderful, everybody doesn't say that.
Right.
We have a wonderful family, a wonderful cohesive family unit. What contributed to that?
Oh, wow. I think the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent. With my mom, some people know, some people don't know, but my mom, we always say that she had a powerful experience, an amazing experience with breast cancer, not just once, but twice, right? So her contribution was that we got to see love in action. We got to see healing in action. One of the things that she would say while taking chemo and while going to school and while getting numerous degrees, I'm going to work, sick or well. And so I literally, when I'm working, I literally feel that there have been times that I have been, not feeling well, or literally things overcoming my body. And once I get my foot out the door, it's a wrap. It's like it diminishes. But I literally hear that. And when she said sick or well, I mean, we're talking about a woman who, when the cancer began, she just handled it courageously, like out of the box. Like, how did you know to do that? Did you even know that you were doing that when you did it?
Right.
My mom, when I think I was away at school, my brother was away at school, my sister was born, she was still young. My brother wasn't born at the time, I don't believe. If he was super little. But she got us all on the phone with the doctor so we could hear, right, what he had to say. She had already told us what she was going to do, right?
Right.
But she wanted us to hear, let's hear as a family what the doctor's saying, that kind of thing. And so she showed us how to approach adversity.
Wow.
Right? She showed us how to, look it in the face, like, okay, let's hear what you got to say.
Right.
It doesn't mean that's what we're saying.
Right.
But we want to hear what you have to say, right?
Right.
And so I just remember that vividly, listening on the phone and hearing her. I still hear her voice. I don't remember what the doctor said. I couldn't tell you to this day, right? But fast forward, I know the story that led us to Drive, which was, of course, she was a woman of amazing faith, like ridiculous faith.
Right.
And she shared with us that, hey, in the Bible, the Lord showed me Hezekiah, where he went before the Lord and things were going on with him. But the one thing she hung on to, she was like, but he asked the Lord for years on his life, 15. And so I remember her saying, well, if the Lord gives him 15, he has to give me at least that much more. And he literally gave, from that time, we were kind of moving in it already, 15 plus a little bit more.
Wow.
plus a little bit more.
What did that do for you?
Listen, I tell
What did
people.
that do for
I tell
you?
people all the time. You can't tell me anything. You can't. I have a whole different definition of what healing means and what healing looks like, right? Because I have a mom who, like, while I was away at school, but she would tell us, hey, she would go to chemo, and this would be the kind of woman that she would gather the staff, gather the nurses, and lay her hands on the chemo and have them pray with her, and then she would be like, okay, now you can instill it. Now you can put it in my veins. Because I remember the walk between deciding, okay, do I get the surgery? Does she going to take chemo? And saying, hey, we're going to use all that God has. But, when you have stuff like that implanted in your mind, like, of course I'm always going to be well. Man. Of course I'm always going to be well. Even in the adversity of something happening to me, right? Myself, even as a little kid, from the time of probably 8, from what I can remember, or younger, always in the hospital, surgery on my ear, my right ear, supposed to be literally, I shouldn't even be sitting here. Because there was just so much infection in my ear, right? What? It was early on in youth ministry. I would show the kids, I would show the back of my ear, the whole bone is missing. It's called a mastoidectomy, where they remove the bone, and I was in the hospital and, that kind of thing forever, it seemed like. I was always going to the ear doctor. And as a kid, I don't know how I knew this, but as a kid, I started teaching myself sign language. And it was crazy because nobody said learn sign language. Nobody said that, but I started teaching it to myself because I said, well, if I ever go deaf, I'll know sign language. What? Go figure. Right. Go figure. So I'm very adamant about those. I'm very adamant about those who can't hear. I'm very adamant about those who can hear, but it's another story. Right. But I'm adamant about that kind of stuff. Like, that's a part of me. I know sign language because I still want to learn, like, the full out language of it. But I just remember adamantly teaching myself as a kid the letters, because I'm like, if it goes silent on me one day, what would I do? And this is as a little kid, right? But I'm going back to say, at that time, my mother wasn't dealing with breast cancer. At that time, it was me dealing with the healing. But she would take me to my doctors. I had a Caucasian doctor his name was Dr. Rosen. And they were like family to us. They were like family when, Caucasians and blacks per se weren't supposed to be that close. Right. But I remember but she made going to Dr. Rosen a big deal. We went to Manhattan. We would go to the city. We would get something special to eat. It was like a big deal wrapped around the fact that, even now I'm thinking about, I can't even imagine what she was thinking. Literally, week after week, month after month, taking her kid to the ear doctor. And I remember I had to have these long, packed, my ear was packed with stuff, draining, just a lot of stuff going on. But she somehow made that a big deal.
I'm blown away.
Right?
I'm blown away.
Right.
So it's connecting for me. It's just a little bit here because I know there's more, but your mother stamped in you something major.
Something major. And I believe she stamped it because something was stamped in her majorly. Because my mom, even though she had her mom and her grandmother, per se, from what I remember, she became a foster child. And we're still trying to, she has it in some of her diaries. She transitioned at this time. In some of her works, that she's written, the greatest thing that she raised us on was the story of the butterfly and how the butterfly transitions. All of our lives connect to this butterfly. But the thing about it is she went from, living her life to becoming a kid that was in foster care. And it's just now funny that we're having this conversation, but my nephew is literally going to unwrap her story, her book that she was writing for her dissertation. Her autobiography is going to be written. And I read a tiny bit. Honestly, it was just a little still too painful for me. But I read, and I could see her. But I read where she talked about our first apartment was on top of a funeral home. was on top of a funeral home. Like, I knew none of this stuff. And she was just talking about, as a little kid, what she was experiencing and what was happening. And then it goes right to, and then I was, and so in my mind, even as it's in this moment, I'm like, what was that?
Right.
What was that piece, right? But even there, I believe the parenting guru began there because she was always an advocate for children, right? Always an advocate for children. So much so that in New York, she was not just in New York, but she was the first Black female child life specialist. First of its kind. Now child life specialist is the hugest thing, one of the hugest things when it comes to children and healing and how they heal and how they get well. That's what she wrote her dissertation for her master's on.
Wow.
In New York, there was a wing that she began and started in one of the most major hospitals in the world. She helped build the unit onto this hospital so that kids, while they're healing, if you couldn't get out of the bed, then you got the toys brought to you, or you got the stories brought to you, or there was just a way that she began to teach doctors how to speak to kids, how to speak to them, how to speak to families, right? I believe this is where the part that the bells are going off, right? But that's living legacy in New York City right now.
Wow.
Right? When she passed, she was that woman, if you said her name, you're like, oh my God, but those are the things that, transpired that are within me. Right?
Oh, without a doubt.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. I mean, I was a candy striper. I would go with her to work at the hospital. She was an admin, what they would call now, I guess, an executive assistant. But I knew her boss, family, his name was Dr. Tilly, still remember him. But for me, it was like a big deal going to work with my mom. And I would, I just remember the uniform. And I remembered it was at that time that I fell in love with older people, wanting to make sure they were okay. In my neighborhood, went and met all the older people. And, it was just that is what transitioned, right? Wow. In me. But anyway, dad, how to become, dad, an amazing man, amazing his own way. I usually start the story with sharing, how his life ended, but, just beginning the fact that at a young age, in maybe my 20s or so, I realized why our relationships, my mother, my brother, and myself, were somewhat so tumultuous. And I believe it was the Lord showing me how to heal, because he shared with me, because I would, try to figure out, like, why does my dad respond? What is going on? And I remember, again, the Lord showing me, taking me back to my grandfather's funeral. I remember that he had lung cancer. I remember us visiting. I remember obviously there was something that was going on with them. Families have their thing. And he only towards the end began to visit us. So, my grandfather was like everything. Played the trumpet. He was everything. But they had their thing. So towards the end, it became less and less. And I remember as a kid, obviously they must have had the last words, right? So we all went home, and we were literally waiting on the call to come back and see my grandfather because he was dying. But I remember the Lord showing me the pain of my father in, maybe watching my mom go through this sickness, and the pain of my father watching his father go through alcoholism. He was also an alcoholic himself, right? But came out of it. I remember my own healing regarding my dad came from, whatever he went through in his life is why he is. He's a product of that. And that allowed me to get to a place of having compassion for my father versus the hate, the pain, the turmoil, oh my God, how could you do this, right? I was the kid that, and I've shared this before, but when my dad would come home, before he would come home, I would literally go in our house and find, because as a kid, your parents have stuff around. They got stashes, but it wasn't like we had a open bar. He would stash his because it wasn't our way. My father was a top accountant in New York City for St. Vincent Hospital, but he had his stashes. And I was the kid that would go and put water in there. I don't know why I did that. Who does that? I don't know. But in my mind, just knowing, okay, and this is what I believe I was thinking at that time, if I water it down, then it won't be as strong, and then he'll be kinder to us. He'll be okay. He won't talk to us. He won't get into these rages. And then I remember, even as a kid, I not going to sleep until I would hear the door. Well, imagine if you never heard the door sometime.
Wow.
Right? And that wasn't all of him. He was an amazing person. But understanding that tragedy came out of whatever tragedy of his own life.
Right.
So that I could, as a person, just begin to heal and be able to have my father, have a human being, have a person, right? All of these things came out of him for me to be where I am today. So
I can see how you have so much compassion for kids.
Yeah, and families. Yeah.
Like the grace, knowing you had an amazing father that got caught up. You were able to find within yourself, because I think that's important. When you're able to go through and get healing yourself, you have compassion on others, and you can have compassion on others.
Right.
And you can see past the disease that they're dealing with right then.
Because there would have been no other way.
Right.
You get to your point in life where it's like, okay, there's nothing else. God would have to show me something, because it just was too much pain, too much turmoil, too much tragedy, too much back and forth, right? So I believe that was just a divine download for myself and my father, right? At 20, before I got married, I remember taking time. In Stone Mountain, I lived in this loft, and I remember taking my book, sitting under the stairway in my apartment, and writing my father the longest letter, because I said, I know that I can't even get married until I unpack this with him. And the only thing I remember now is that I was just so upset that I remember starting this like, hey, you know what? I can't remember. Only thing I can remember in my childhood is 8 years old, and my dad and I would sit and watch the game together. Love it. Only now am I recalling, now that I'm unpacking my own life, I realize, I love watching the game. And just the other day I was like, how do I look? And I remember I would sit with my dad, I would sit on his lap, and we would watch the game. Right, so these are and I know I might be all over the place, but this person that sits here was developed through all of that, right? And I tell people even now, as I conversate with people, as I take people through tragic things, funerals and burying children and family members, or helping people get over hate and pain and hurt and strife, that it only switches when you are able to then turn that pain and then you turn that into compassion, because then you begin to pray differently for that person.
Right.
You just pray for them as a human.
Right.
Because hurt can only go as far as to the grave, but if you don't want to go there too quick, then you make a different decision. Right. And so I remember with my dad having to do that, like gaining compassion for this person, for who he is, so that I could be okay. And we fell in love.
Wow.
We fell in love. And, with my dad, it was amazing, how his journey transitioned for him. My mom had transitioned, and so he was on this journey of, he was called, in Carolina, it's called a Geary, or a Geary. I'm going to remember the word, but it's called that because they go through finding out your legacy of your life.
Okay.
Right? But, he was excited about that. He went back to my mom's family's country in Barbados and found my aunt and would send things back, because from when when I was little, I was there, right? But he would send things back, and he had things in the home, and he had the Bible, like, how the old, like, from
Really
slavery
thick.
dated
Yeah.
back.
Right.
He had one. But I remember, I'm losing my point because I have so many,
Right.
many things
No.
are, like, even just coming up for me right now. It's amazing. But I was going to say that even in him transitioning was amazing, because he went and visited my brother in the top part of Baltimore. Then he went and visited my younger brother in the part of, this is all in, like, all of August. Went and visited my younger brother, stayed maybe weeks with them. Then went and visited my sister in New Jersey, and her girls and her husband, stayed with them. Then he came and visited us the last week in August. And then the last week in August, we always, come out of the fact that my mom's birthday was in August. His birthday was the end of August. My son John Avery's birthday is the end of August. Our wedding anniversary is the end of August. So I remember one year we began this thing called the Worrell Week. And we just celebrated that whole week, the anniversary of his birthday. Well, this particular time he came for about, I want to say 10 days. And one of the last things we did was, of course, celebrate our anniversary, celebrate his birthday, celebrate John Avery's birthday. All of those things happened. He went home, unbeknownst to us, right? He went home, and, we could see a difference in him. We could see, the loving, he wanted to be with John, and he was able to see all his grandchildren. And then I remember talking to him, and he was just because he had high blood pressure, different things, but still was eating the way he wanted to eat.
Right.
I remember him just so upset about that he ate this fried chicken. Oh, I shouldn't have ate it. Oh, da, 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 da. And I remember saying, Dad, it's okay. You'll be fine. You'll be okay. Don't worry. Don't beat yourself up. And afterwards, we realized that he had the same conversation with my brother, same conversation with my other brother, same conversation with my sister, talking about this chicken, fried chicken. I shouldn't have ate it. I know my. I don't know how. Maybe a day or two after he got home, Renato comes home. I'm like, what are you doing here? Because I was at home with John Avery at that time, stay-at-home mom. And he goes, your dad passed. Well, it just, he was just there. So, of course, my brain went into, like, devastating mode, but me not even knowing it. Unbeknownst to me, I go to my phone, and I call his number. And it rings, and, of course, his voicemail comes on. And I go to my husband, no, you're lying. My dad's not dead. Like, it was really that, that first, when they say the first stage of grief is really shock,
Right.
And I went through that. But what was also so powerful learning the story is that my dad dropped dead after he watched one of the favorite dances at church. He went to an African descent type of church. And they did this. They said he watched the whole thing, came outside under this amazing tree, and he just dropped dead right there. The fact that my dad was in church, right? But he still was doing what he loved to do, which was the arts. He was also a musician, right? But what was so wild is that they said, in order to find me, because they had no idea how to get to me. And they were like, hey, well, all I know is that, she goes to this church in Atlanta. If you call the church, and then there was one particular person that if you ask for him, that they'll find. All we know is that he was so proud of his daughter, and she's at this church, this amazing church. If you call that, and I realized, like, had that not happened, I probably to this day would not know where my dad is, or how that happened, right? So again, when you're talking about who this person is and how I get to this place, and so even for me, when I deal with families now through death, it's a different turn for me, right? I remember my first mom, where we buried her baby. And I was like, Lord, what am I going to say? As I'm walking up to this mom, I'm walking up to her. And it's like something, joy, I believe, just turned in me. And the first thing I said to her was, well done, mama. Well done.
Wow.
In my mind, I'm saying, who says that?
Right. Oh my gosh.
And from that moment on, every time I'm with a mom and they bury their baby,
oh my gosh.
and every time I can literally see it turn them. Well done, mama. You did well. You did well. You did well. So I guess I could just unpack so many things, but those are some of the things, even with the combination of my dad being an alcoholic, a combination of my mom wanting to be, she was so powerful. And I believe, there just wasn't enough time for the world to embark and receive who she was, right?
Right.
Because even while she was going to school, she received, I don't know how many master's degrees. She probably would have already had her doctorate. But she put us through college too, right? It's almost insane.
It
And I know it's like, I don't know how many things I've shared at this point, but it's like,
it's blowing my mind.
Right.
Alyssa, okay. That's a lot.
I know it's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
But what I love about this is I see a direct connection.
Yeah.
Like a direct connection. Your passion, your I mean, I've seen you preach and minister and share to where, there was no other option.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You're going to be happy.
Right. You're going to be.
You're going to be happy. But I see where it's come from.
Yeah.
Obviously the origin is the Lord, but your mom was a specific kind of person.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that is so beautiful.
Yeah.
To even to hear that you drew all of that in what I think is really interesting, that although your mom was who she was and your dad was who he was, your dad called you joy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Your dad
My
called
dad
you
called me joy. Yep. And that's
he planted that seed.
He planted that seed. And I remember, learning later on, I think Bernardo shared this with us, that it's not the mother who nurtures, but it's the father who nurtures. The father is really the nurturer, right? And I thought about that with my dad. Like, really, I think he even wanted to be able to do more of it, but not, with his, just what the world says, whatever. I'll say tragedy. The word I really want to say is those demons of life, just held him. But when he was all the way there, he was all the way there. Hit or misses, it still developed us.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, that mark of joy, I think, is probably what kept him, in many ways.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so, my gosh, what an origin story.
Right.
So now, translate that into the parenting guru. At what point did you decide that this needed to be in the earth? What happened?
I don't know. I don't know the exact pivoting moment, but I know there was a life transitional moment, right? Actually, a friend of mine, I think it was Toya, that we were having another conversation, and she said to somebody, "Yeah, she's the guru. Ask her. She's the guru." But from just advising and counseling families and parents, I just, even in those conversations, I always felt like there was a different way that I went, a different insight that I had, because I just knew that they couldn't leave me the same. You know what I mean? They couldn't leave our presence the same. And many times she and I would do advisements together and talk with people together. And it was almost like kind of like that Batman and Robin kind of thing, right? But I just knew as I began to transition the conversations with families and parents became heavier, especially with moms, became heavier and heavier and heavier, to the point where it was like, okay, this is it. Like, no, you got to look at this differently. You're going to lose your kid. Because I remember different moments in time where I was lost, or my brother was lost, or my sister, or we were kind of lost in our own thing. But my mom was still that glue that snapped that thing back together. You know what I mean? So I think just moving in it caused me to what I now say, I believe with everything in me that I have a voice for the world, right? I remember reading grace-based parenting, and I think our pastors, they also introduced grace-based parenting. I got it then, but I don't know if it bubbled in me like it is, like I own it now.
Okay.
And then I read the book Grace-Based Parenting, and then I got a revelation that related to my own life about what grace-based parenting is, right? That it's not just the norm, because, as you walk with kids and as you walk with your own families, you realize the things that were happening back in the day, that stuff doesn't work. So it's like, okay, you have to give me something different. Because somebody, as my mom would say, either you're not gonna make it out of here, or I'm not gonna make it out of here.
Right.
And then she would say, but I'm gonna make it out of here. So that left the fact. There was your answer right there, right? But just the powerful, when I read the grace-based parenting for myself and really sat with it, that grace-based parenting is so different, because it has nothing to do with the kid. The parenting it doesn't start with your kids. And I remember the Lord saying that to me, like, grace-based parenting, it don't even start with your kids. Like, it doesn't start. Well, where does it start? It starts with you and me, Alyssa. It starts right here. It starts right here. Because with grace-based parenting, what is so powerful about it is that as you allow the Lord to parent you, first of all, you have to come to the place like, you know what, I'm a child too. First of all, let's start with that.
Drop the mic.
There you go. I'll drop it. Here we back. But it's like grace-based parenting takes you to a place where it's like, okay, when you sit and realize and think about, Lord, you really love me. When you sit and think about how the Lord talks to you, just as an adult, he doesn't yell. He doesn't scream. He doesn't taunt you. He doesn't say you better. He doesn't say because I said so. None of the stuff that we were raised on, he literally does none of that stuff.
None of it.
Right? And I realized that he doesn't do any of it because I remember hollering at my kid and the Lord stopping me in place and going, listen, do I yell at you? Oh my God, I thought I was going to die that day.
Wow.
It's like, I don't yell at you, do I? And I'm like, no, Father, you don't. You don't.
Wow.
You don't. You just say the same things over and over and over again to me in your gentle, powerful way. And yes, if it's maybe coupled with consequence, yes. But even in that, you walk me back up to the plate again. And that's the thing with grace-based parenting. The more you have a connection with God the Father and you allow him to correct you, you allow him to coax you, you allow him to challenge you, you allow him to love you, you lay it all on the line. When you've been a liar, when you've been a cheat, when you've been not on time, when you've been not getting up for your own job, all the stuff, like he puts it in your face for you and still loves you through that. What happens is, right, the more that happens and you spend time in the presence of God, you're corrected with him, you're loved on by him, your kid should and only gets the benefit of a parent who has been in the presence of God. So I'm not going to go through all of that and come out and be like, you better, you stupid, how could you, what's wrong? Didn't I say that? Did you hear me? And the thing about it is the development of that with you and God the Father causes you to have a different relationship with your kid, a developing relationship with your kid, to where now you say, you know what, God, you forgive me so much. You have to get into with your kid and forgive your kid.
Okay, so you all need to go ahead and pay for your first assessment. Everybody that listened to this, go ahead and
Listen,
give
I'm
your
trying to
first
tell you.
assessment to the
I'm trying to
parenting
tell you.
guru. She just gave you the first assessment.
Right. And it's real.
It is real.
It is very real. And it's so real. Like, if I didn't see a difference with families once parents realize, you know, I share with people, why I stopped being that black mama that stopped yelling. Like, I remember sitting down. Well, I'm going to go back because it happened with my son, right? Stay-at-home mom. And I remember we were with this group at the church, homeschool group, and I remember they asked me to share. Oh man, so I'm like, oh yeah, I'm so excited. All this stuff, right? So it's just me and my kid, right? Me and Sean, first one, da 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 da. And I remember being so caught up, so happy, so excited about speaking, right? I got him home. When I got home, I was getting ready to switch out, because I can get back and speak. And I remember, John was at, what we called knee age, right? Knee age then. He just, wanted my attention, wanted my attention. And I'm just trying to get out the house. And I remember saying to him, shut up. Let me come back to that. And I get out the house. And I used to live in Covington at that time, which was 50 miles
yes, ma'am.
Coming.
I remember.
And you remember?
I remember.
And 50 miles going. So for 50 miles, the Lord was trying to talk to me, and I wasn't trying to hear it because I was only hearing what I had to say, what I was going to share. Da, 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 da. I get there, of course, His grace and His mercy allow me to, we'll put 50 miles back. Me and the Father, He's talking. And He defines for me, shut up. He said, listen, when you said shut up, you literally called his soul, his spirit, and his mind to shut down. Wow. You literally spoke to his future and everything that is within him. You literally caused the wisdom, the revelation, knowledge, the understanding that I called in him to be shut up. Wow. And so this is the conversation that I'm having all the way home. To this day, if you go into the room where I minister, I tell if they say shut up to each other, I'll literally stop the message. What? Who said shut up? They'll tell you. They laugh, but they're like, oh, now they don't say this is today. But I remember the 50 miles home, I went and I got my kid, and I still see it. I picked him up, I put him on that counter, and I just began to, and he was little. Please forgive me. I should have never said that. And then I called back those things that I shut down. And I know people think, people are like, oh, listen, you do a lot, you the most. Well, no, don't say shut up, right? Don't say it because I know what that embedded for me. I can't speak for anybody else. Right. I can't rock it for anybody else. But I understood something about a child in that moment. I understood something about their soul. I understood when you're speaking to that kid, you better be mindful of your tone, bringing me to the moment of now where I'm saying, I am not a black mama who hollers, number one, because the Lord does not holler at me. Mm-hmm. And because when you do that, you literally are pushing that down into their soul, to their spirit, to their heart, to their mind, and into their future. Like, what? Who are you to do that? When God himself,
oh my gosh,
does not yell, God himself would never do that.
I tell you, I have a story related. My son, Joseph, he was going through middle school, I believe, and he was just being a middle schooler, aggravating at the time. Right. But I'll never forget this. That story just reminds me of a story. So. I think he wore an earring or something like that. Well, we didn't tell him he could wear the earring. So he came to the game not knowing we were there, and he had the earrings in. And I didn't care where we were going to be. I just knew he was going to feel my wrath.
Right.
So got into the hallway in the midst of everybody.
Wow.
And I began to lay in. And immediately,
right,
I got arrested. Same thing.
Yeah.
Did I ever do that to you?
Did I ever do that to you? Right.
And man, he was older now. I apologize now. It's just, but I didn't see it quite the way you're saying it, but it affected me so because I realized, what did I shut down inside of him at that moment?
Right.
What did I just close up? What did I just, he in my vernacular now, it's like, he's closed me off in certain ways now because I shut that part of him down. He can't be expressive in front of me.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Shut
Right.
that down. That's not.
Right. And that's part of it too, with when talking to families and talking to parents, it's like sometimes we have to be honest with our part, kids don't come here depressed.
Right.
Kids don't come here as liars.
Right.
They don't come, something is there, an empty slate, an empty computer, and something is laid on that, it is laid on that, what do you call it? What's the thing you put into
the disc?
Huh?
You talking about the hard drive?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And sometimes you got to sit with yourself and realize, what did I put on there? And sometimes, unfortunately, kids are just exposed to certain things, right? That sometimes as parents that we have no idea that it happened and that hard drive has been tampered with, right? But again, being able to sit with yourself as a parent, I think that's one of the world messages that I have is a great way, an encouraging way, an empowering way to do that. So that we don't sit in that moment, right? We can really take the future at hand right now. We can really turn it right now. And sometimes for parents, it starts with an apology. I'm sorry. I apologize. I should have never said that to you. As I did with John. I should have never said that to you. I should have never spoken to you that way. And I remember now the other part of the story is while he was crying, I literally stepped over him. Like your dad, yeah. Wow. Like your dad is here. You're fine. You're okay.
Wow.
And as that 50 miles back, the Lord was showing me all of these things. But I think those things fine-tuned why I am so adamant about conversations with parents and kids and families and your tone of voice. Do you understand that you're not speaking to just a 16-year-old, but a 26-year-old? If you challenge his manhood publicly right now, and you don't see it as manhood, you see it as, it's a 16. No, you're challenging how he will rise up as a man, if he will rise up as a man, when he is challenged at 26, 36, 46, 56. Right? You cuss him now, well, you're cussing that 56-year-old man, and that 56-year-old man may not have been able to cuss you back at 16, but he'll cuss his wife at 36, 46, 56. And then we want to go, oh my God, how do you act like that? Well, at 16.
Wow. That is a world message.
That is a world message. And so I think, coming to the place of saying, how do you say the parenting guru? I even say it differently, the parenting guru. Because I'm a guru of my own encounter with life. And that experience, I use it to encourage others. So it's not about the guru like the world says, oh, you're the guru, you know everything. What I know, I know. And if you're in my seat or you're talking to me, if you're with me, it's going to hit. And in that moment, I am so consumed because if you're sitting I tell people, I tell this to when I'm doing women's ministry many times. If you're sitting in my seat at this point in your life, then obviously it's life or death. And so my conversations usually come across like it's life or death. Mm-hmm. You don't get to leave here not making a decision to turn, if that makes sense.
It does.
Right? If that makes sense. So that message of being able to say, how do you call yourself the parenting guru? Because it exudes in me. And then, that origination of that book that I read or that I heard, this really originates with non-African American families. So I know I'm also standing in the gap for us because our parenting began as a slave. Mm-hmm. That's why. Right? And that's a whole other story to unpack.
Other story.
a whole other story to unpack. Why dads go from home to home, can have a whole different family over here and a whole different family. That's a whole different. But looking at that, I realized too that I literally cuss the root of slavery and parenting in some of these homes. I curse it at the root, that it travels no more, that it will never rise again, and that there'll be a new development of parenting based on God's grace. I can do that, and I do.
Okay, Alyssa.
Yes, sir.
I realize we can go on and on.
Right.
I realize that you've unpacked some stuff that I never knew, and I've known you for over 20 years, but also that your passion, your drive, your direction for parenting is divine. It's divine. And I'm excited. How can a parent connect with you? How can they get a part of the Parenting Guru Society? What do they need to do? How do they connect with you?
Really, it's just a matter of reaching out either on the Parenting Guru Facebook.
Okay.
Or I am Alyssa Worrell at gmail.com. Or anything that says Parenting Guru at gmail.com, they can find me there. But primarily, just go to I am Alyssa Worrell at gmail.com.
Now, is there I know that you are looking to set up a group for parents, specifically for parents, to just a place for them to reside and get information. And I know you're working on some things, some really big things at the time. Is there anything that you can kind of give them vision for, to look forward to?
Yeah, one of the greatest things I like is to do are the parenting boot camps.
Okay.
So families can come into that Facebook group. They can sign up for a parenting boot camp, and it's really just a way to say, hey, look at our family as a whole and help us get to another place, right? Or there's one-on-ones. Everything can happen within that Facebook group.
Okay.
Everything can happen. A lot of the teaching, a lot of the learning will be there. They can just kind of come in there, make an appointment, or the setting up maybe even for their children, because sometimes just their kids may need some advisement. And so we do that there also. They can just let us know, hey, I heard you on the Backpack Podcast, and I want to set up something for my family. Beautiful. They can definitely do that.
I love it.
Right. And then coming to is the Parenting Guru Instagram. So probably by the time this jumps off, that will definitely be up. So it'll be with the exclamation point, Parenting Guru.
Guys, we've unpacked a story that I think is absolutely necessary for parents, children, for families. It's not one particular group. It's the world. Your marketplace is the world.
Yeah.
Is there anything, one of the things that I ask entrepreneurs, because you're a unique entrepreneur, but you are an entrepreneur, what do you need? Like if other entrepreneurs are listening to this, or other businesses, or what do you need, or what could you use help with that maybe someone could hear and say, oh, I love what she's doing and I want to help. What do you need, and how could they help you?
Meaning things like marketing marketing is definitely something. Because at the same time, it's, a great idea. It's still a sensitive idea. So uniquely being able to do that, helping with the 501c3 portion of this is something that will help to subsidize as we help families. And I think being able to if you're a company that has a resource. So, for example, if I have a family who needs a house, right? I literally can, without a whole lot of humble jumbo, without a whole lot of red tape, be able to move them in a direction. So resources are those kind of things that are necessary. Places for families to go and just have peace. If you're a vacation home, you're like, hey, Alyssa, this vacation home in Puerto Rico is available for you. You just let us know, send the family there. Everything is taken care of so that they can just have peace. So things like that, major resources, major quality, top of the line, blow your mind kind of resources, right?
Yep.
And then, of course, our systems is something that we need. Systems that once you hit that Facebook group, making sure that the funnel is really, really, it's sharp and it's clean, and you don't wait not even 24 hours to be responded to. So those are the things that are necessary.
That's good.
At the back.
That's good. Well, I believe our reach is in the millions, and I'm sure there
Yes.
are many, many people that have all the resources that you need, the connections that you need to help. One of the things I really believe that, it's when you're servicing people, and that's a global mission in and of itself. When you're servicing people, that the resources are going to be there to help you.
I believe that.
Get done what you need to get done. So, guys, thank you for joining us for another episode of the Backpack Podcast, where we unpack your story so that others can embrace it. And I believe that there are millions of people out there that are ready to embrace the parenting guru.
Let's go.
Thank you, Alyssa.
Thank you.
Until next time, I'm out.